Hey guys, welcome back to the Real Estate Monopoly. I'm Kerwin Donis, and today's guest is Joe Finneran. Joe is a real estate investor located in the suburbs of New York City. He does both flips and rentals. He believes in paying off debt as fast as you can to be able to maximize cash flow, and it allows him to live a life where he can live off his rentals and travel lots and not have to work as much. So, Joe, thank you so much for being here. If you could, please introduce yourself to the audience and just fill us in a little bit about how you got into real estate.
Hey guys, my name is Joe Finneran. I am from, it's a town called Middletown, Goshen, New York. It's a little over an hour from New York City. I got into real estate in 2012. My family was in real estate a bit. I kind of grew up around it. My mom and my dad, they had a couple properties, a couple two families. They weren't as involved as I am now, but I grew up around it, and it was just in my family for a while. So I was brought up, when I was 8 years old, I'd go with my mom on the weekends to help her fix up a house, or she was a school teacher during the week, but she'd get a summer project every year, I remember. And I hated it. I was 8 or 9 years old, but it kind of grown me into who I am now, or had the idea that real estate's a really good business to get into. I started in 2012, which was a great time. I was fortunate enough. I'm in my early 30s now, where I started growing up. I was 25 then. I was starting to get more serious about life at that age, right when it was a great time to buy. Where people that are a bit younger, maybe they're 19 or 20 then, and they weren't even looking to buy a house. They were, can't wait to turn 21. Where I was already past that stage, and I said, all right, like I should buy a house soon and get serious. So I my age now timed it out right, where I was 25 looking to buying a house. The market is really low now. And that's when I started my real estate. I bought in 2012. It was a 3-unit for like $60,000.
And did you live in one of the units, or was it just like completely for investment?
No, I lived in one of the units and I rent out the other two. It needed some work. I think I put like 30 into it. And then I sold it a year later, and you could still get houses $40,000, $50,000. The market was so depressed. Bought some, sold some, bought some, sold some, then started renting out. I met these guys from the city. They were starting to invest upstate, and they were telling me, you got to rent some out, keep it for retirement. And then I would say about 2015, 16 is where I started to really hold property.
Nice. That's
Yeah.
awesome. And so I would love to know, I mean, you said that you eventually got into flipping. When did you make that transition into, because you sounds like, the first one maybe was more so from a need to have a place to live. And then also obviously you wanted to get into the investment game, but at what point did it become like a career focus?
We're full time, I would say maybe 2015, 2016. What I did, I kept flipping, and then I used that money that I made to invest in rental properties. Buy them cash, not having to get a loan. So I'd flip and then buy a rental property. I usually do 2 flips and then buy a rental, because I didn't want to use all my cash at hand. Then I'd be stuck. That's what happened with the first one. I kind of got stuck. And I said, well, I'll sell it. I'll make some money. Then I'll buy a couple more and then sell those. And then once I got a bankroll is when I started holding property. But then eventually I'd have to sell one to buy something else.
Yeah, absolutely. For that first one, I'm assuming you qualified for the lending and things like that. Can you give some advice to someone who might be in that similar spot today? Because I know it's a different market, like you said. What advice would you give to somebody who's looking to get into their first property, whether that's to live in or maybe even to kind of like how you did it, where maybe live in one unit and then rent out the other one?
My advice is try to save up the 20%. Some brokers would do 10% for a conventional loan. FHA, I'm not a big fan of. I mean, it's lower percentage down, but it's going to be very strict on the condition of the house, meaning you're not FHA. From my experience, the house has to be like brand new, hand railing, safety hazards. And whoever's fixing up to that high of a standard, they're going to ask a premium for the house. You're not going to get a value add deal where, the floors might be older, the cabinets might be older, and you can go in and replace it, or there might be some issues, but you can go and fix it up and have some instant equity. So I would, bite the bullet, try to save your money, try to save up to 20%. If you're in the big cities, Seattle, San Diego, New York City, it's going to be very hard. Look to the secondary markets an hour away, towns that are up and coming. In those big markets, Seattle, New York, the tech industries, it's made it so expensive. It's going to be hard to save up that 20%. And there's a lot more sharks out there. There's a lot more players. There's more people. Where in the secondary markets where I live, it's booming now, but there's still not, there's not 1,000 guys who have $1 million bankroll. So you have a lot less competition. You're able to get a deal.
Yeah. Something we noticed, and you mentioned this before we started recording, was how during the pandemic, a lot of people kind of migrated to these secondary markets from the main urban centers. And we experienced, as a Sunbelt state, we experienced that transition of a lot of people coming from northern, more urban areas. So just curious, how did the suburbs and the secondary markets surrounding a big metro like New York City, how were those impacted? Did you guys experience a lot more competition? And can you just kind of walk us through that?
Yeah, well, before the market was heating up all around, but now there's all these articles that came out in the paper since COVID and still going on. A lot of New York City was the epicenter for it, and a lot of people lost a lot of loved ones, and they said, I don't want to live in close quarters anymore. What am I doing? They moved to my area. You have trees, rivers, breweries, wineries, and there's a lot more people coming to my area, and it shot up the prices big time. And we're still seeing a large migration, and the market's exploded. Values have doubled, probably doubled. It's unbelievable. Even with these interest rates going higher, it's still not, the growth is slowing, but it's not going down or stopping. It is slowing, but it's not going down or stopping.
Yeah, and so we can also relate to that. We're in the Raleigh-Durham area, so like 2 hours from Charlotte, North Carolina, and we're experiencing a lot of people coming here, and there's not also, I think the housing supply is an issue as well. Is that something that's an issue in your markets where there's not enough supply, and that's kind of what is driving all this demand, and the prices up is a result of demand being greater than the supply of housing?
Yeah, I would never. A friend of mine told me 6 years ago there's going to be a housing shortage, and I said, I don't know what you're talking about. And the last 2 years, you've seen it. Since COVID, it seems like, I guess a lot of people have been displaced. People are moving to other areas, so you're seeing this housing supply, this shortage. I put an apartment for rent. I have like 100 applications in a matter of a few days. It's unbelievable. I'm not sure about all over the country, maybe Midwest, Indiana, or those states if there's a shortage, but where I am, there definitely is.
Yeah.
They said they've been underbuilding for years, maybe finally catching up.
Absolutely.
I know a lot of people still in their late 20s, or they're living at home, and there's nothing wrong with that, but when I'm a bit older, and most people moved out by then, but there's nowhere for them to go, or it's so hard in an apartment, it's so competitive.
Absolutely. And that's just a testament to how the market's changing. And there are a lot of efforts being made to provide that housing, but I don't think it's going to be able to keep up with the demand for it anytime soon. So that's why, they need people like us, investors and developers and things like that. You mentioned that you have 32 units in your portfolio, and that's kind of just a proof that you're holding on to these properties, but you're also flipping. And I think that's really interesting, kind of like mindset switch for us, especially. We came from a wholesaling background, and it's very transactional. Like, we're in real estate to make a quick buck. And with flipping, it's not necessarily incredibly fast, but you're not holding these properties long term. So was there a point where you made that transition of wanting to hold properties long term and to build wealth? I believe you started your first property was a hold. So kind of, can you walk us through maybe at what point did you learn the importance of passive income and building wealth versus just making money in real estate?
I want to stop working. I remember I was flipping a house, and I have money, but I'm constantly chasing the can down the road. not going to last forever.
Yeah.
And I said, monthly income. When you have one or two properties and you're getting a couple grand a month passive, it doesn't seem like a lot. But then I said, wait a second, if I had 20 or 30 of these, it's like doing a flip every month without, just doing some management. So I don't have to do that. And I mean, good thing I did hold on because the rents have skyrocketed. And I think they're going to continue to go up as interest rates increase because it's going to be more expensive to buy.
Yeah.
And a lot of people in New York, I'm not sure about your area, they don't really know there's a big rental market because they don't know if they want to stay in this area. A lot of people going from New York to Florida, Texas. So what happens is these people start off renting and then all of a sudden 5-6 years go by and they're still here and they're still renting. And
Yeah.
you're at a lot more often that they're not sure if they want to stay here, but then all of a sudden a decade is going by and they're still renting. So the rental market's very hot for my area right now.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so I'd love to know, how are you coming about finding these deals? Because it seems like you're maybe cherry picking when the deal flow. So you're like, I would like to keep this. You say about after every 2 flips, you'll keep a rental. So can you kind of walk us through maybe how you're marketing for these properties or just generating the leads, and maybe in a competitive market like you're in?
I have some billboards up that were working for a while, but now not as much. People got kind of numb to the message, I would say, and you're seeing signs everywhere. We buy houses. We buy houses. You know what? Now it's been a lot of personal relationships. I started going a couple of years ago to political meetings, which works out great, even though you're not into politics. But I'm usually one of the younger guys there, and there are all these older people who have some wealth, and they say, "Hey, I might want to sell my house." And then you can talk to them, become friends, and all of a sudden they want to sell you one of their rental properties, and they like you. You're the young guy in the room. You're there for in the same political party. When you go to these real estate meetings, I notice everybody's on the same hustle. Everybody's, oh, you have a deal, there's going to be 10 people talking to them. Where if you go to these other kinds of meetings, whether it's political or barbecue, a more relationship, then you can find these deals sometimes. And that's how I've gotten some of my deals. Just even talking to people at the lumber yard. Hey, you know anybody? Oh, I heard this guy. Through word of mouth. Yeah.
That's awesome. We do that as well. We are big advocates and believers in investing in your network and just attending networking events. We try to go to as many as we can in the area. And that's so important because really having a relationship will have an infinite return on investment. And for us, like we're in multifamily syndication, so we'll maybe raise capital from investors, but it works honestly with no matter what lane in real estate you're in. Like I know Leica is a mutual friend, but she also is a previous podcast guest, and she mentioned how she'll go out and network with wholesalers, and through those relationships with the wholesalers, she'll generate leads for her portfolio. And so it's just really like getting out there and meeting people is so important.
Yeah. And I mentioned I had a junk removal business before, and I kind of shut it down, but I would get leads from that because the first thing when people want to sell the house is to get all their garbage out, clean out all the junk. So I bought 3 houses just from a junk removal lead.
That's awesome. No, that's awesome. That's like an off market, completely like your own list. You're creating your own list that way.
Oh, I'm looking to sell my house soon. I got to clean out all the stuff. And then you're selling? I might be interested.
So
yeah.
I think it's really impressive. And one of the most, just really awesome things that I remember hearing about you is that you own the majority of your properties outright, and you try to avoid over leveraging. And so I would love to know, a lot of people, they're scared of taking out debt. So just to briefly kind of make sure we're all on the same page, can you explain the difference between good debt and bad debt? And then we're going to kind of go into how you're using debt.
Well, for me right now, I don't have any debt. I have a small HELOC on my home that I use, but I only have to use it as needed, meaning I do a flip, I can pay it down and redraw. That's my favorite. You're not stuck paying this interest rate. How I did it is I didn't get any mortgages. I only have a HELOC on my house, which I pay only when I need it. I don't like having a lot of debt. You get in this where then you have so much debt you can't live off your rental properties, or you're only making a few $100s per unit, and you don't really have financial freedom. Yeah, you're gaining wealth at the end. You're paying it down. If the market goes up, appreciates, then, compared to what you owe and what it's worth now is separate. But you can't really live off of that if it's only generating a few $100s a unit.
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard. And yeah, they say in 15, 20 years, you'll have this big pot of gold at the end. And that's great. But I'm trying to live good now a little bit. Like, or in 30 years, I'll be 65. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
I mean,
No, that's an awesome mindset to have. Can you just briefly, because I'm not sure if everyone is going to be familiar with what a HELOC is. Can you explain what that is and maybe who can qualify for it, who might want to use it, and why it might be a superior or better alternative to other options?
The HELOC's a home equity line of credit, meaning it's pretty much like your house is a credit card, but you can get cash, certified check the next day. And the thing I like about it is you can draw on it, and then suppose you're doing a project and you did a flip with it, you can take that money and pay it back down, and you only pay interest on the time that you're using it. Or a traditional loan, you take the money out, and if you pay that loan back because you don't want to pay the interest on it, then that's gone. You can't take from it again. It's HELOC stands for home equity line of credit. It's like a charge card. They usually give you 70 to 80% loan to value on your house. Meaning, if your house is worth $1 million, they'll give you a line of credit for $700,000 to $800,000. And I like to use that revolving. I use it. Maybe I'll do a flip. I'll pay it down. I'll buy a rental with it, sell something else, pay it down.
Yeah.
And people will say, well, hey, the numbers make sense. What does it matter? When I see that big thing, I'm paying $2,200 a month in interest. So that's a G-Class payment. You know what I mean? On a Mercedes. If I can pay that down, why not?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That's a G-Class payment, or $3,000 a month on interest. I could go buy another house with that.
Yeah. No, and so it seems like there are some potential downsides to the kind of approach you're taking. I would love to know, I mean, is it impacting the pace at which you can grow your portfolio, or how are you pacing the growth of your portfolio?
Well, I'm doing a couple flips, and then I have the cash to buy it. Look, if it's a big deal, $10 million, $5 million, yeah, I'll leverage it. But the smaller deals, for me, I don't think it makes sense to.
Yeah.
Like under $100. Maybe on $1 million, yeah, but if it's under 500,000, it doesn't make sense, because you get a good cap rate. Even 500,000, you're only, after you pay the mortgage and all that, you're not making much.
Yeah.
And you have all that time.
Yeah. No, thank you. I appreciate that answer. And so I was actually with a flipper, and he has a really big built out operation. I was with him over the past week, and he mentioned that he's going to start transitioning his business into more of a long-term hold, and just holding more properties instead of flipping. And so you mentioned that you flip, but you also hold properties. And I would love to know, we touched on it earlier, but can you expand on how the increasing interest rates, how that's impacting your operation, and maybe how you're adjusting or planning to approach your investing moving forward?
Well, right now I'm going to actually take out some loans for the first time to have some ammunition ready.
Nice.
So I'm going to take out some money. I believe rental properties, they're going to go down in value. If the interest rates go to 6%, let's say, I think they're at 5 now, something there. They're going to go to 6%. So the rental, that means before, when they were at 2.5, 3, you could buy a rental property at a cap rate at 5 or 5.5 and make that 3% spread. Now, to make that same 3% spread, when they're at 6, you're going to have to buy them at 9% or 10%. So if I come in, I'm taking a loan with all cash, and I got a lower interest rate, I'm going to get that full 10% or that 9%. So the guys that are using leverage, they're going to have to offer less money for the places in order for the cap rate to make sense. So I see rental properties, 2 units and up are going to be a good deal. Single family houses, not necessarily, because those are based on the desires and wants of people. There's a good, they like the school district. They go to the church down the road. They love the neighborhood. They like the cabinets. It's you can't do it by the cap rate on single families.
Yeah.
Those still grow a bit and either stay where they are or may even still grow a bit because of the housing shortage. But rental properties where a lot of people are leveraging, most guys do, when those interest rates hit higher, they have to offer lower to make the numbers make sense.
Yeah. And so do you have any advice or like tips you would give someone who is maybe flipping and is kind of concerned? What advice would you give to them if they're in a similar situation or with this impending like increase in interest rates?
If they're doing flips, I recommend, lower budget houses. Those are always going to be in demand. The really expensive one, $1 million plus, or it depends on your area. San Diego, $1 million is like a 1-bedroom condo, but there you go. But target the lower, the lower priced houses. Those are always going to be popular because as the interest rates go up, where before those people might have qualified for an $800,000 mortgage on their DTI, their debt to income. Now they're only going to qualify for a $600,000 mortgage. So if you stay with those lower priced properties, I think that's your safest bet. There's always going to be a lot of competition. If people want to buy, they're going to buy. They just won't qualify for as much of a loan.
Yeah. Well, that's a great gold nugget. I appreciate you sharing that. It's about time for our speed round. So I just wanted to make sure you're ready. It's quick.
Sure.
Awesome. So the first question, what has been the biggest failure along your real estate journey, and what did you take away from that experience?
The biggest failure, I bought a 4-unit building in a very small town. I thought it was a home run. It was like $80,000. It needed a ton of work. This was the only deal I lost money on. And it didn't work out. I learned that when you do a big project in a small town, you're up against it. The neighbors are complaining, the town, you're the biggest thing that town has ever seen. And they don't want, even though you're fixing up the building, try to make it nicer. People don't like that, especially if you're not from there. This was kind of a development deal. It had a bar and then 2 apartments upstairs. I was going to turn a bar into 2 more apartments and make it a 4-unit. And I just got so much pushback. I did the roofing, the siding on it. The building inspector was constantly there. I mean, there's nothing else going on in that town. It only has 2,000 people. So from that experience, I would say is you don't have to be in a big city, but you don't want to be in this little village work either, where if they see you putting on a new roof, everybody's talking about it at church. So that was my biggest takeaway, that I don't like doing big projects in small towns, and I don't like development deals. I don't like it where a deal where the government has a say on what it could be, something where I have to get approvals, because you're in their hands. It's not already approved for that. There's barriers of entry then.
Yeah, there's a lot of red tape, I'm sure. And I would love to know what is your kind of criteria now moving into a market? Like you said, not a small town, but what would you define as a small town versus a acceptable location to invest in?
It's the town has to have more than 6,000 to 7,000 people. It has to have more than that. It can go up to 1 million people depending where you are.
That's funny.
Yeah,
2,000 people. That's like my high school was bigger than that.
Yeah, no, it's a small village. It had 2,000 people. It's a very small village.
Yeah.
Otisville, New York.
Okay, who would have thought that New York still has places like that?
Yeah.
That's awesome. So what is your long-term vision for your business, and what are you aiming to accomplish moving forward?
I want to get 50 units, and then I think I might be done.
Nice.
We'll see, you know,
Yeah.
then I don't have to do flips. I can live off the income passively. If I have 50 units paid off, I can live a great life. I don't need any more than that. I mean, who knows? Maybe I'll still be doing deals then. But once I get to around 50, I think that'll be it. But then, I probably said the same thing a couple of years ago. Once I get to 32 units, I'm done. But like Rockefeller said, just a little bit more.
Yeah, 100%. And there's this, I guess not misconception, but it's typically thought that it's harder to manage single family over multifamily when it comes to the property management. And if your end goal is to kind of like remove yourself from your real estate business and kind of have it generating passive income for you, how are you handling the property management of your properties? And do you have any tips for somebody who also wants to eventually hand that off?
Right now, I'm actually self-managing them. I don't get that many calls, maybe one a week. The biggest thing is always plumbing and heating. I notice everything else can wait. That's like the most important. If there's a leak that happens, if the furnace goes down, somebody's freezing, that's the most important.
Mhm.
So have a good plumbing and heating person on that you can call. The other thing is you have to coach your tenants really good. I tell them this is my house, but it's your home. And I give them a talk before they move in that I don't want to get called for the door handle's loose or the light bulb is out or the toilet handle is off of, is running. It's off of the whatever,
Mhm.
the hand that they're also, I'm the landlord, but they're also an adult. And that they kind of get the pep talk in the beginning that they have to take care of a lot of things themselves. And look, if there's no heat, no problem, call me. If there's a huge burst and it's doing damage in the plumbing, send me a text, call me, I'll get somebody out. But I tell them you can't call me for the little things.
Mhm.
They usually get it, especially with the housing shortage. They want the place, they're gonna behave.
Yeah. And so you mentioned, I think you have like a mix of kind of the types of real estate that you have in your portfolio. You have some smaller multifamily and some single family properties. Can you explain maybe some of the major differences in between those two properties when it comes to having being on the rental side of things?
Sorry, say that again.
Like, so you have some small multifamily properties and you also have single family properties in your portfolio. Can you explain what the differences are in managing those properties on the rental side of things?
The two families, usually the lawn, or the multi-families, I usually hire a landscaper for the lawn because the tenants bicker against each other, whose turn is it? And then they don't do it. And then the town gives me a fine because the grass is too high. So I usually do the lawn for them. The single families, they're responsible for their own lawn. They have the whole house. It's their castle. They get full use of the property. They have to take care of it.
Yeah.
With snow and ice, I make sure in all their leases that the tenant's responsible for the snow and the ice removal.
Nice.
Um, that's more of a liability aspect. God forbid somebody falls and slips. It takes the liability off of me and adds another safeguard.
Mhm.
If anybody will ever sue, look, it's the tenant's responsibility. So if they have a friend over, if they slip and fall on the steps, there's right there, they're responsible for the
Yeah.
snow and ice. It takes the liability off of me. It just adds another layer of protection.
Nice. No, that's a great gold nugget. I appreciate you sharing that. And you mentioned earlier you want to travel and just kind of have lifestyle freedom of lifestyle and things like that. Can you expand on what your why is and what really motivates you to even be in real estate and continue working?
What my why is to make more money, to be able to come and go as I please, not have to worry about bills. I really like mountain climbing. It's an expensive sport. I like doing that. To be able to wake up and not have to work a 9 to 5. My friends are working right now. I'm relaxing while I put in the beach at my
Yeah,
house. It's and to be able to come and go as I please.
awesome. I love that. And you shared
Yeah.
a ton of knowledge today. I appreciate it. But if there was one piece of advice or wisdom you'd want someone in our audience to walk away with, what would that be?
One piece of advice. If I would say it's about the market right now. Be careful what's going on and take my advice and invest in the lower priced properties. They're always going to be hot and available. And if you haven't gotten to real estate yet, it's never too late. Even though prices are a bit high right now, I guarantee in 15, 20 years, it'll be higher than it is right now.
Yeah, no, that's awesome advice. And would you recommend people, because I know there's kind of two schools of thought. Some people think, oh, now is not the time to get into real estate. They're going to wait it out and wait for the market to come down. Could you maybe speak to that person? What would you say to that person?
I mean, the market might come down a little bit, but if you don't have the cash, the interest rate's going to go up. You have to look at things about not just the price, but what the monthly payment is. Where, yeah, you might be paying less for it, but if the interest rate is higher, your monthly payment is going to be the same, if not higher.
Yeah.
So to start of things in monthly payments, sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes. And if you're doing a rental, just make sure the rents make sense. Well, I don't bet on the appreciation. Like, it's going to go up. Make sure the deal is okay right now.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to make a home run on it, but make sure it's okay right now, not the foreseeable future.
Yeah. Awesome. And if anyone in our audience wants to learn more about you or just follow you on your journey, where can they go to do that?
I'm on Instagram. My name is the Casa Investor. That's Casa, like in house. If you guys speak Spanish.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the Investor. I'm on Facebook a little bit. My name on Facebook is Joe Finneran, Finneran.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Joe. It was a pleasure chatting with you. I learned a lot, and I know my audience is going to get a ton of value. Thanks so much for your time. And thanks everyone for tuning into the Real Estate Monopoly Show with the Donis Brothers. If you want to access our 5 new mistakes new investors make playbook, go to www.donisinvestmentgroup.com/playbook to download that for free. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Let's get out there and take action.